It's time to get to the point.
Get to the point. Get to the point.
I feel like that is in some way, shape, or form a knock at the lack of brevity that I sometimes display here. It's not what we're trying to. We're trying to, lay out the points and the facts of the news of the day, but the get to the point feels a little bit, critical of how sometimes I go off on tangents. So I'm not entirely sure I like, but let's do it. Let's get to the point. First up, from Breitbart, a Colombian model pleads guilty to leading drug money laundering ring in the United States of America. A 33-year-old Colombian model pled guilty to a sophisticated multi-state criminal investigation that laundered $31 million from a drug trafficking ring in the United States financial system. But of course, all of what is the term that libs always say? No, the immigrants do less crime than people born here. I mean, one, that's just factually not true. And also, I recognize that this is just one instance. But this, of course, this is happening. If you come into the country illegally, facilitated by the drug cartels, why would we think that they would just stop there? The drug cartels are like, hey, we got them into the country. They paid us for it. That's all we're going to do. No, they're going to use the people that are in the country to push drugs. They are drug cartels. They are massive businesses. Of course they would do that. She faces up to 20 years in prison and substantial fines, and she was detained in Colombia, interestingly enough, in 2023, extradited to the United States in 2025. Authorities seized about $2 million in related assets. Great news that we're catching them. Bad news that I guarantee you a lot more of them are here. Up next, the FAA, interestingly enough, you might have heard this story floating around, reopened some El Paso airspace after a special security closure. The Federal Aviation Administration briefly closed a bunch of airspace around El Paso International Airport in Texas for what they initially announced would be a 10-day restriction due to special security reasons, but it was reopened earlier. Paused a bunch of major airlines. They were trying to so here's what it actually was, right? The closure was prompted by a neutralized incursion of drones linked to Mexican drug cartels, i.e. the last thing that we were just talking about. With the FAA, Department of Defense, and this is from Newsmax, I'm not entirely sure why they're calling it the Department of Defense. To my understanding, it's the Department of War, but we're quibbling over semantics here. Addressing a threat leading officials, including the Transportation Department, to confirm that no ongoing danger to commercial traffic was under threat. Bottom line here is, exactly what it is. The drug cartels are doing what drug cartels do. They put drones into place and they terrorize folks. I'm glad the FAA is taking a look at it. I'm glad that it's back open, but that is a big problem that we all would like to see fixed. To a CNN, getting to the point. The U.S. economy, and this I know was probably just so terrible for CNN to have to report. I love it when there's news so good from the President of the United States, the person that they hate the most, that they just have to report on it. This is one of those situations. CNN, the U.S. economy added stronger than expected 130,000 jobs last month, January 2026, significantly, according to CNN, surpassing economists' expectations of around 75,000, so almost double, while the unemployment rate seemed to be declining slightly from 4.4 to 4.3. Dang it. I would just love to be USA.com if you have any thoughts about what it's like in those CNN newsrooms when they're typing this out, going, the bad orange man did good things again. I really, really hate them. Overall, construction jobs added 33,000, manufacturing jobs added 5,000, durable. But private sector, effectively, is what I think we're looking at here ultimately. Primarily health and social services, but 136,000 jobs added, which trumps the numbers that economists expect. And I do think, too, there's an important emphasis to be put on the private sector jobs. California, Governor Newsom talks about how California is the fourth largest economy in the world if it were just its own country. Yeah, but a huge percentage of California jobs are government jobs that the government uses debt to pay. So sure, yeah, there's more money circulating, but it's all the money from the people that don't have any money because it's the taxpayers' money going into debt to pay people to have jobs that honestly probably are necessary. So that's a good thing to point out too, that it primarily in a lot of ways private sector jobs. Another one from Axios. Another one probably just Axios is a little bit more fair, but they're not super fair. They're like kind of middle of the road-ish. But headline from Axios, how the Save America Act could impact 21 million voters. Oh, you know what? I must have misread this. I thought I think I switched the verb. That's somewhat fair. Impact is the correct word. The three major changes here, and I know we've been talking about the SAVE Act, so maybe this is a little bit of a homework review for all of you fine folks that already know all of this sort of stuff. It mandates proof of citizenship, which is an ID, which again, unfortunately, black people can't get because they're too stupid, according to Governor Hochul in New York and a bunch of libs everywhere. I don't happen to believe that, but that's just what they say. So unfortunately, those minorities won't be able to vote. It'd also be required when registering to vote, requiring a photo ID in order to cast ballots in federal elections, which the woke states that don't want this still can do their whole state stuff. And it would impose additional measures like in-person citizenship verification for mail-in registration applicants, which of course would help ensure that somebody was a citizen voting. Again, I know the only reason that you don't like this is because minorities are just too darn stupid to get an ID, and that's just the cost that we have to pay to keep things. Apparently, minorities just can't vote, unless of course they are smart enough to get an ID, and all of the aspersions being cast on them by the libs are incredibly racist and demeaning. Last one to round up, getting to the point. Grand jury rebuffs Justice Department attempt to indict 6 Democrats in Congress. Remember that video that was going around of the "you don't have to listen to unlawful orders"? I mean, technically that's true, but the idea that it's just blatantly unlawful, like, hey, this is 100% unlawful, that's where the sticky situation led to. There's a bunch of senators, including Mark Kelly and Senator Slotkin, that were in this video saying you don't have to listen to illegal orders. And we said at the time, and I'll still say it now, that the problem with that is, well, what's legal and what's illegal? That's kind of the whole point of the justice system, right? The Constitution is what the Constitution is. The executive branch gets to enact the laws that were provided by the legislative branch, in other words, Congress, and how both of those things interact are all up to the justice system. Whether or not it's illegal is kind of unknown. What it seemed like they were implying is, hey, if you don't like this order, you don't have to follow it, which would be treason. In this particular case, a grand jury said, we're not going to charge them for it. And maybe that's the right thing to do. I don't know. For me, and maybe this gets some pushback to USA.com. On elected officials, it seems like, especially in the political climate that we're in now, you got to have some ironclad proof. Let me say it this way. There are way more egregious things that elected officials have been caught doing that I think we should go after. We should go after all of it, but this one, in terms of like the ironclad case being made, would I probably vote to indict? Yeah, probably, but there are bigger fish to fry is what I'm saying, and maybe we should focus more attention to Governor Tim Walz. Not to say that this isn't bad, I'm just saying that's at least where my mind goes when it comes to this sort of stuff. Now it's time to introduce our brand new segment, Official Business. We start off today's official business in congressional hearings. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi was sitting in front of a congressional committee, and there were a lot of fireworks. Now, there's actually some emailers that email the show quite often that are not big fans of one Pam Bondi. We're not going to get into her specifically right now. I really just wanted to play this for the fireworks going off. This is official business being conducted on behalf of the American people, and unfortunately, it devolves into complete and total utter chaos. At least the chair of the committee, Congressman Jim Jordan, seems to have a good-natured attitude as to what otherwise is a just chaotic train wreck of a congressional hearing. I believe this is cut 8.
It's about they indicted. The president said they indicted him twice.
Mr. Chairman, please stop the clock and stop the restore time.
Okay, here we go.
The time belongs to the gentleman from New York. We will give you a few more seconds. We will do that. But when you ask a question, the witness gets to answer. You may not like the answer, but she gets to answer.
The question was, how many of Epstein's...
They don't like the answer, Chairman,
my time.
because it's honest. So he asked a 4-minute question.
Restore 45 seconds, Mr. Nadler, please, Mr. Chairman. You can let her filibuster all day long, but not on our watch. Not on our time. No way. And I told you about that, Attorney General, before you started.
You don't tell me
I did tell you because we saw what you did in the Senate.
You're a lawyer, not even a lawyer.
Committee will be in order.
Time, and I should get back at least 45 seconds.
We will give you a few more seconds. I said that already.
45 seconds.
Okay, I'm timing right now, Mr.
I do appreciate the fact that Congressman Jim Jordan is like, come on, guys. Like, what are we doing? because that is official business. Now, what I do think is fascinating about this, I'm not sure, TVUSA.com, if you have any thoughts about this, I'm not sure that like public hearings do any good anymore. Like I know that we want to be transparent, we need to see everything, but what it ends up being is just this like grandstanding opportunity for guys like Representative Gerald Nadler, who famously pooped himself at a podium with Nancy Pelosi. We don't have the video of that right now. I just want to put that in people's memory. Congressman Poopy Pants, sometimes is what I call him. But Pam Bondi says exactly what he does. These guys get 5 minutes, and then they talk for like 4 minutes and 45 seconds, and then ask, do you agree? When I say no, they're going to clip that up. So I want to give a full answer and not just have this be like a speech platform for one of the poopiest congressmen in the country. And then she gets into it with Jamie Raskin, who I think later on she said, I hear you're pretty good at stock investing. He didn't say anything back to that. But another official business in that same hearing, I didn't want to play this. Unfortunately for Representative Nadler, not only does he poop himself in his pants, allegedly, he also falls asleep. So even though there's no real exchange of words that is necessarily taking place here, it is official business when you fall asleep on the taxpayer dime. Cut 9.
Protect the American people and defend the rule of law above all else. While our work is never done, we have made tremendous. In 2025, we saw the lowest murder rate in 125 years.
Like, of all of the places not to fall asleep. Look, Congress, if they don't want to, don't need to have a very busy day. You got to go to your committee meetings. You got to go to floor votes. I guess you have to do town halls, even though people are doing that less and less and less. Bottom line is, there's plenty of time to sleep. The last thing that you want to do is what Joe Biden famously did several times, fall asleep when the minimal amount of time that cameras are on you. At least didn't poop himself this time. Just at least that's the case. In other official business, the Vice President of the United States was seen outside of his plane taking questions from reporters regarding the Olympics, the America haters that are representing America in the Olympics. Now, again, I would love to solicit emails, tpt@tpusa.com, if you agree with me that, hey, I still want these people to win because they're Americans. Or who was it yet the other day that emailed saying, I don't want them to lose, but I don't necessarily root for them. My position is, yeah, we should root for Americans. But at the same time, the Vice President makes a good point in conducting official business of the United States of America on how we should view people who use their Olympic platform to spout off against the very country that is paying them money to be there.
Olympic athletes were unbelievable. I know the entire country is rooting for them. Yes, you're going to have some Olympic athletes who pop off about politics. I feel like that happens every Olympics. My advice to them would be to try to bring the country together. And when you're representing the country, you're representing Democrats and Republicans. You're there to play a sport, and you're there to represent your country and hopefully win a medal. You're not there to pop off about politics. So when Olympic athletes enter the political arena, they should expect some pushback. But most Olympic athletes, whatever their politics, are doing a great job, are certainly enjoy the support of the entire country, and I think recognize that the way to bring the country together is not to show up in a foreign country and attack the President of the United States.
Now, that is actually a very unifying message. If only, he had done it in Spanish, then it would be truly unifying. Because that's what Bad Bunny did, right? He unified people by speaking in a language that most of us don't speak. That's what unity is. I mean, to that point, it actually is pretty interesting, some of the commentary back and forth. I did go back and forth with some of my more lib friends on the internet the other day, specifically about Bad Bunny, saying, hey, he's just doing his thing. Look, the second that you enter the political realm, the political commentators in that realm already have every right to give their 2 cents. And I think that's what Vice President J.D. Vance was saying there. It's like, hey, support him. Yeah, you may not agree politically speaking, but the second you jump into the political arena, yeah, you should expect some pushback from the folks who have been here and are consistently talking about politics. If you don't want to share your political ideology as an Olympian, so be it. Do it. Fine. That's totally fair. But the second you do, you have to believe that all of the commentators are going to be giving their 2 cents. In wrapping up our official business today, this is not in a congressional hearing. It's not an official press conference by one Jasmine Crockett, representative Texas. But it is important to note for many reasons, specifically because of some of the things that she said here that I thought were fascinating. And I'll give you some context after we watch this. This is Cut 11.
I've always been someone who has been intellectual. I was top 10% of my class at Texas Southern my first year in law school. I was always very much kind of digging in and wanted to understand. I was always the person that would bring the receipts and wouldn't back down. So, you know,
you always clapping back too?
I was always, there was always a pushback. If I feel like I am right on something, I've always been very clear about that.
Again, that is Representative Jasmine Crockett. And like she says, she's an intellectual. As we all know, anytime she comes up in conversation, you think that is an intellectual. She pushes back. She asks questions. She does all the things intellectuals do. She mentioned she was in the top 10% of her class at Texas Southern. So I did some digging around. Texas Southern's Thurgood Marshall School of Law ranks in the bottom percentage of law schools, according to U.S. News and World Report, Best Law Schools 2025. They don't give a specific ranking, but it's between 178 and 195 out of 195. This places the law school that she's bragging about as in the top 10% of the worst. Places that law school in the bottom tier of accredited U.S. law schools, often described as the lowest numerical range before unranked bottom schools overall.